Folks, we are in a government shutdown right now, at least currently. It can change moment by moment. But one big question that Katie and I are getting from people is, what does the government shutdown mean for your intellectual property rights? So Katie, let's jump right in, because a lot of people are thinking, yeah, the government shut down. Like what's happening to my patents, my trademarks, my copyrights? What's the easy answer?
Yeah, this is such a good question. So the easy answer is that the Patent Office is one of the only self-sustaining offices at the USPTO, meaning in the government, it's entirely funded by the fees you pay when you file patents.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is that they're still operating, things are still running as usual, and there's really no real change to anything happening at the Patent Office or to examination times of any pending patents or trademarks or copyrights right now.
Love it. So people don't need to worry if they're in process. It's not going to add additional time.
Right.
Awesome. Because I mean, right now I have several trademarks that have been submitted, and naturally, just like we share in our book, there's this chart that we're going to share about. This can change regularly. I'll bring it up though for the people that are watching the video. Some are not. Some will be listening to the audio only. But we have this IP protection comparison chart, and patents do tend to be the longest. So if people are waiting, it's still at least moving. And then trademarks, again, these dates can change. Sometimes they say 6 months, sometimes 12 months, sometimes it goes more. Copyrights, you know that I have 14 submitted. So I use all of these, Katie, in my toolbox. Instant IP for smart contracts, I think I have about 400. But why do you think this? And we even got this question. We were just together with Scotland entrepreneurs, so maybe we'll even send them this recording. But that was super fun being with the Edinburgh
Chamber of Commerce. Yes.
Yeah. So they came in, and wow, I was impressed. I mean, they had a lot of maturity in their business. I thought these were going to be startups overnight, but you could tell that they were really trying to build US connections. But why don't you kind of frame that a little bit? Because I think I walked away realizing, IP is a global thing and entrepreneurship's a global thing. So maybe talk about how that happened and what you walked away with the other day.
Yeah, it was a great day, so much energy in the room. And how it started is that through my partner, Giuseppe, who's in the emerging companies practice in our New York office, he has a contact who's originally from Edinburgh. And she works with startups on the human resources side of things. And she is very good friends with Mayan, who is the head of the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. And Mayan was organizing this trade mission with about 20 different companies who are all established and trading in Scotland and Europe. But they're looking to enter into US markets.
Yep.
So the purpose of their trip, specifically to Boston, was to meet local resources within the entrepreneur community and really understand what it might take to open up their business here and be able to start trading. A lot of them were looking for maybe clients, connections, and resources that could help them expand their networks. So it was a great day. We did a lot of programming. Kary spoke too about instant IP and entrepreneurship. And then we also went to a local accelerator here in Boston called Mass Challenge, where they learned about some of the different programs and mentoring available to them
It
as
was so
well.
good.
It was great.
I filmed it because, at Cedarville, entrepreneurship's a big thing, but we're not in Boston. I mean, we're in the cornfields of Ohio, but I thought Mass Challenge, I mean, just the facilities. You walk in and there's think tanks and pitch areas and a kitchen and podcast rooms. And I mean, just the facilities alone was amazing. And I was like, how is this thing funded? And then there's mentors, which you are one of them. And it just seemed like there was a lot of life at this Mass Challenge.
Yes, loads of it. And really, what I think is most important about Mass Challenge too is that a lot of it is run through donations from local established companies through sponsorship. So they don't take any equity in the startups that they work with. So it's a great community to really hone in your pitch deck, hone in your skills on pitching, learn about market research, go to market strategy, and get connected to this database of over 4,000 mentors who have expertise across kind of all areas, but who can kind of help with your questions or issues that you need assistance with.
Well, and I think the takeaway for people watching this is that, look, if you have an idea, there are people who will help you, right? I mean,
Right.
I saw that big time when we were chatting with the individuals from Scotland. There was a lot of collaboration in the room. I was scratching my head thinking, why is Wigan and Dana and Giuseppe and Katie and Paul, and all the people. There was the HR lady. Was it Julia?
Julie Semple.
Yeah, Julie was there. I mean, there's a lot of people there that were just willing to help. And I feel like, you can pick up headlines on the news that are super negative. CNN, constant negative news. That's what it stands for. No, I'm kidding.
I like that.
Yeah. But, you can buy into that and be like, the world's against me. It's super tough. IP's expensive, blah, 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 or IP protection. Or you can say, you know what? There's a lot of people like Mass Challenge, like the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I was shocked to learn they're going to China. They're going to Florida. They're going to India. I mean, that's amazing. And no longer do you need to be this, hey, I come from a small town and the world's against me and I'm David and everyone's Goliath. And I just feel like if you want to buy that line, you can. But if you want to tap into amazing people and resources like Boston or others, it's available. What do you think, Katie?
I totally agree. And I think it reflects also the global economy and how so much business is global. You look at these companies that started in Edinburgh or small towns in Scotland, and they have massive operations and are trading all over the world. And so I think it really speaks to the way in which we conduct business and how much technology has accelerated business growth. And I think you're spot on that there's always people willing to help and lend a hand, especially entrepreneurs and people involved in the entrepreneur community. They understand and appreciate how hard it is when you're getting going, or even you're running across these issues that can seem daunting. And so I think, building out your network of contacts who can assist, it becomes kind of vital for your success as a founder.
I think there's no better time than now to be an entrepreneur. I mean, even YouTube there's just so much stuff, and it's almost paralyzing if you're not careful. And that's why I tell people, like, in fact, I told my, who was it the other day? Oh, a Cedarville student asked me the question, and I said, you need to balance your consuming with your creating. So I don't know what you think, Katie, but I see one of two extremes usually. A lot of entrepreneurs just go into this massive consuming mode where they're just consuming every podcast, every book, and it's data, facts. And I think it's actually born out of this fear of perfectionism, that they have to have everything perfect before they launch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an excuse. Like, research can be an excuse. I see that, or I see the other extreme, more rare, but these people are just creating. And so they haven't consumed facts. They haven't consumed the surveys of their audience, target market. They just go into create mode. And that's not healthy either. I think you need this balanced diet of consume, create, consume, back and forth. What do you think? Do you think that that's a good recipe for success, is kind of like both?
I do, because I think if you're too heavy-handed in either one of those areas, you can lose sight of your focus. And I think it kind of takes this mix of that to inspire the other part of it, right? You want to consume information and knowledge that then inspires you to create something. But if you're, too busy consuming, you're not going to have that energy or momentum to create. Whereas too, if you're, too busy creating, you're kind of narrowly focused on that and you miss sight of other things. So I think it does require a balancing there between the two factors.
So good. So let's do this, Katie. Let's jump in now to IP infringement. So you and I got together in Boston and we came up with this list. I said, should I send you an agenda? Because there was a lot, to talk about. And I just want to recommend Katie and Wigan and Dana, because they are knowledgeable in so many areas. We had everything on our list from my recent IP holding company we created, which maybe we get into that in a future episode, because there's some tax strategies, there's some legal strategies that makes sense. And I feel like that is a question I get asked a lot, is, what company or companies should retain my IP and why. So I know we talk about that in the book, You Are an IP Company, which, by the way, folks, big shout out to Katie. Amazon, if you go there, at least this month, it's been probably the last couple months, it's been bestseller in patents, trademarks, copyrights, intellectual property. I mean, it's being read by a lot of people. And I think that's encouraging, Katie, that it's being read by super new rookies, people new to the field, all the way down to IP lawyers. So maybe before we talk about our agenda when we got together, why do you think the book is resonating with both spectrums?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, it's a time for creation and innovation. And so I think there's a lot of, especially with AI, right? And these ideas that robots are going to replace the workforce. People are creating so much IP, but they don't really know what to do with it, how to organize it, how to protect it. So I think that has generated a lot of interest in this area. And, people are tapping into that creativity and that IP. And so they're curious about it.
Totally. Well, I think that's right on. I feel like you can't be in business today without intellectual property being part of the equation. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, you're like, yeah, my market's just my small town and I don't have any IP. That was kind of like assumed with the trades or services. But now, because every business is an online business, I think that's probably what changed. The moment every business created a website, competitors just like,
Yeah.
That's interesting because you could kind of be isolated and hidden in your small little town. But if you got a website, you probably have social media. Even if you don't have social media, competitors can find you from all over the world. And now suddenly what you do and how you do it is front and center. And if you don't put a castle wall around your IP, we tell people all the time, like in certain towns, you leave your front door open, people are going to steal. So what do? You put a lock, you put a fence. Some people have cameras, some people have dogs. But that's what instant IP, smart contracts, copyrights, trademarks, patents. You are putting layers. So let's talk about that, Katie, because this last week, we won't say who, we won't say what, but I was Googling for my class prep at the university, a phrase I've been saying now for probably 20 years. And maybe in an episode in the future, we'll mention that and unpack that. But I've been saying it for years, and all of a sudden I go to Google it, and certainly I was attributed with it, but I showed it to you, there was this massive amount of posts, videos, memes, like graphics of people using it. And at first you scratch your head and you're like, did I really come up with it? But then I did some deep dive on Google and Goodreads, and it was very clear that we had the first use and we have been using it. And then I went to you and said, should I file a trademark? And we went with Frank, who's awesome. Big shout out to Frank at Wigan and Dana. But like, what do you think, Katie? Because we filed a trademark yesterday. But do you think I was smart to do that? Do you think I took the right steps? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say this comes up quite a bit, especially with trademarks, because in the US we're in a first to use system. So who's ever kind of using the mark first usually gets rights to it. Now there's some complications with someone who's doing state rights and geographical limitations, but for the most part, it's a use-based system. So
for trademarks, it's interesting.
For trademarks, yeah. So where we had, a lot of different evidence of your use that dated back to the early 2000s, right? That's where putting in place the trademark was kind of beneficial because we could show such early use. And so it's something, again, why tracking these sort of things is important. Tools like Instant IP, where you can time mark your use, that becomes important when you have to file the trademark and show actual evidence of your use from your earliest claimed filing date, use date.
Yeah, we had the phrase, the mark on Instant IP. It was in podcasts. It was in my books, which are copywritten. So now the strategy, folks, if you're listening, is we did file the trademark. Now that the trademark is filed, I'm going to write a press release on the whole concept, which really is a historical documentation of when we first used it and how. And then, Katie, I'm going to go to these individuals and basically start the conversation because, some of these people have millions of followers online and they're using a trademark of of mine and essentially earning income and claiming it as their own. And so, again, the goal isn't ego. It's not, ooh, I want to cause people pain. But like the reality is it took a lot of time and money to develop these things. And so when somebody just comes alongside and claims it as their own, it is a theft type of process. So you see this
completely.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. When I think too, it's also with trademarks where you build up value is through your usage and through consumer recognition of your usage to be associated with the goods and services that you're offering that trademark for. So here too, where you had this use, particularly for coaching, right? Entrepreneurial applications of it, and all of these infringers popped up. I think too, it was really damaging to your brand and you kind of value you've worked hard to establish in it as well.
Yeah. And then if that wasn't all, somebody reached out on a certain social media platform and basically said, hey, everything you're doing with Instant IP, I'm doing. And you and I had a chat like, wow. And we did a little research on this person and they're just starting. And of course, Instant IP, we put layers of protection, some great patents he wrote going back 4 years. And so, it honestly felt good and safe. And this is why we have this podcast, folks, because Katie's an IP professional. I'm an IP practitioner. But yeah, when you've been developing for 4 years and millions of dollars this invention, and then somebody comes alongside and says, hey, I'm doing the same thing. Katie, how did we respond? And what was the strategy right now?
Yeah, I'd say too, the thing is, if you're listening, this sort of thing happens all the time to entrepreneurs. So especially as you start to gain momentum in the marketplace and as consumers start to recognize the brand and the product, this is not uncommon. So it's something that you need to work with your legal team on to kind of analyze the threat and figure out, how and when is the best way to respond. Sometimes these are innocent, errors, right? I think Kary's seen that before with an innocent error when his TED Talk was ripped off in an article through an AI mistake. But so, it can be varying scope of what's going on, but working with your legal team to kind of analyze and assess that threat or risk and how you want to take action, it just is important.
Yeah. We're not trying to be jerks, but the point is, like, I think what's actually cruel would be for us not to say anything. And then he goes out after spending multiple pitches, perhaps investment money, perhaps, website building. And then this gentleman does launch his competitive. And then we say, hey, so we basically put him on notice to say, listen, man, we're putting you on notice that we have a big moat of IP in this area. And if it were me, I would want to know. And I would say, okay, I better go figure out another idea to do something.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I think too, as an entrepreneur, that's where it's important to also be looking at infringers, figuring out, okay, who are my competitors? What are sort of the companies that I'm monitoring myself to put others on notice too? Because when you do own IP, you want to, part of the way in which you create value with that IP is enforcing the IP and making others aware of their liability for infringing your IP. So you're constantly trying to protect your business from getting attacked, but also you want to be alert and figuring out who are the others out there and how, what kind of way do we want to put them on notice or work with them. And sometimes it's, very much collaborative and not adversarial, but it's something to always be thinking about as well.
Yeah. And I know Frank has a trademark monitoring service that I immediately said, hey man, let's talk about getting this moving. But there are services, you would say, that also do the monitoring as well. Is that right?
Yep. There's services, there's alerts, patents, new patents publish every Tuesday. So there's ways you can set up alerts for that. But it's just something to be continuously looking out for.
I love it. So folks, this is really meant to be a helpful tool, helpful podcast, not theory, but I've seen other people have, there's this one guy who has a great podcast on patents, but he's a lawyer. And as a result, it's not the other side too. Like, I think the beauty of this podcast is you have Katie, who's a fantastic lawyer and represents multiple specialties, especially her law firm. But then you got me in the field who's getting IP infringed. So, you're getting both perspectives. And I think that that's super helpful because it can be overwhelming. And I've realized that, Katie, that if you're new to the field, it can feel like a lot. So I would encourage people to definitely get the book, and we make it fun. We talk about Taylor Swift and Krispy Kreme and Disney and, all the things that they're probably using, consuming, brands they know of. And suddenly they're like, oh, wow, CrossFit is licensing their IP. That's interesting. Or EOS, has a strategy where they give away their IP for free, but you can only charge if you are a certified implementer. So I think there's a lot of cool use cases of IP.
There are, yes. And I think it's something too, as an entrepreneur, when you're first getting started, there's a steep learning curve there. And that's where I think too, once you've protected your own IP and started to get a flavor for it, it starts to become a little bit more natural and a little bit more relatable too.
I love it. I'll just plant the seed, Katie, that you and I may have a book signing if people are in the Boston area. I'm just going to tell them the date. I'm not going to tell them the location yet. But November 8th in Boston, we are going to locate the right book store to potentially have a book signing. And if you'd like to come, we would love to meet you. And, if you're into book signings, awesome. If not, love to meet you, hear your story, hear about your IP. And that would be fantastic. So thanks so much, Katie, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. What a great week.